happy day! A ceasefire has been announced in the conflict between Gaza and Israel. It's not really a conflict. It's a mini genocide. We know that. How did this come about? What we do know is that Donald J. Trump had nothing whatsoever to do with it. Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America.
And you ain't black.
I don't know what I said. The first time ever any...
What are you people?
We're Americans. We are Americans indeed. My name is Vincent, and this is Middle America with Vin and Sori, where we are not left-wing, we are not right-wing, we are just right. Kind of tongue-in-cheek. Look, guys, you got to have fun, right? You got to have fun sometimes. You can't all be serious all the time. What did they say? Too much work, no play makes Jack a Republican or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And obviously it's not something you want to be. So, well, actually, you might want to be a Republican today. I think the Republicans are strutting around kind of... I feel like the Republicans are strutting kind of heavy right now. I'm not going to lie to you. I think the Republicans are going to start making a victory lap. Dear listener, the Israeli and Palestinian conflict has been raging. Ever since the 1948 division of the land by some white folks over there in Europe who decided to give a couple of their European compatriots a swat of land after the horror that they suffered at the hands of Mr. Adolf Hitler. Look, whether you believe in the 6 million number or not, you have to concede that they were not treated very well. Extreme harm came to them, and they capitalized on the pity of the world and the shock and the horror of the world to go and eke out some land for themselves. You can't really be mad at that. Of course, what has happened since then is that the Israelis have taken more land, and even when they agree to give part of this to back to the Palestinians, they go and take it anyway. That's called a settlement. The Palestinian people, who are not supported with billions of dollars by the only superpower on the planet, eventually, as is the case in all human history, they fought back. Well, they fought back in ways that are unconventional because their neighbors have 22nd century gear and they have rocks, okay? October 7th, Hamas launched an attack in order to liberate the people of Gaza because, as Noam Chomsky and pretty much every expert in the region has said, Gaza is essentially an open-air prison. Some people call Gaza an open-air concentration camp. To call it a prison is a misnomer because these people's existence is not criminal. I would encourage people, if you are an evangelical Christian, I would encourage you to watch a film, and we might watch it together actually if there's enough interest, but there's a film it's a documentary that these evangelical Christian boys did entitled With God on Our Side, and it talked about how the evangelical wing of the American church has taken a side in this conflict and taken a unilateral position in which the Israelis are always right and the Palestinians are evil and horrible and God's angry at them, and all the land that the Israelis want should be theirs because they're God's chosen people, etc., etc., etc. So because of this, the church in America has not done anything relative to the cause of justice for Palestinian people, even though the IDF, that would be the Israeli terror force, or the Israeli Defense Force as it's called, the IDF will brutalize a Christian Palestinian, sexually assault a Christian Palestinian, torture a Christian Palestinian, just like they will torture and sexually assault and do all types of manners of other horrors to other people. They do not discriminate. The Israelis retaliated. I believe the Palestinians killed 1,600 people. I'm putting 1,600 people in scare quotes because we know about the Hannibal directive, which is that they kill their own hostages so that the enemy has no bargaining chips, etc. Okay? So that 1,500 number, whatever number the Israelis give you, has to have some sort of accounting for that. Now, having said that, there's been about 50,000 dead people in that little strip called the Gaza Strip. They've been bombed. They've been starved out. They've died of thirst. The Israeli justification for all of this civilian death is that, well, we can't do anything because Hamas is hiding in schools and hospitals, etc. And so that's basically been the back and forth, dear listener. Okay, now, every single time Mr. Biden has talked publicly about getting the Israelis to temper their genocidal ambitions against these Gazan people, Bibi Netanyahu goes out of his way to contradict him and say the exact opposite of what Biden says. This has happened over and over and over and over again. Well, for some reason, the Israelis are now open to a discussion for a ceasefire. As Larry has pointed out, the ceasefire has not been officially ratified yet. So you can't count your chicks before they hatch. But here we go. Let's look at this. Now here's what I'm looking for in this video. This is a Humanist Report. The Humanist Report is a left-wing, almost like the dude, I'm pretty sure, is an actual communist. But he basically said that Americans were too stupid to accept communism, so he doesn't come out and like make an apologia for that. So I think that's pretty fascinating. But he also describes himself as an anti-theist. And he also said that the decision as to who to vote for between Trump and Biden was obviously clear, and that if you voted for Trump, then that means that you hate humanity, you support World War III, etc., etc., etc. That's what we were told. Okay. From this guy in the Humanist Report. Let's check out what he has to say about this most recent development, shall we? Let's check it out. What they're saying is Allahu Akbar, which means that God is the greatest. I gotta say, shout out to the Palestinian people for representing their religion in one of the most compelling ways possible. I'm a Christian. I was born a Christian. I will die a Christian. I will be a Christian in 1 trillion years. But I always give credit where credit is due. The way that these Muslim people took this pain, took this suffering, took this abuse on the stage of the world and maintained their deen, their religion, maintained their faith, maintained their dignity. I don't care what you say. I don't care what you believe or don't believe or claim you believe or don't believe. You got to give them some respect for that. These people were tenacious and they would not lay down and die. I know personally, some of them have actually gotten their hands dirty. You just got to give a lot of respect to these Palestinian people, because they have been targeted by these Israelis for decades. We continue. She's bowing down to God, thanking God. She's happy.
You just saw people in Gaza.
Now, dear listener, there's a story in the Bible, and it's about wise King Solomon. And there's old King Solomon, and there's two women who show up. And what happened was, each woman had a baby. And at night, because this is the Middle East, in the ancient world, they were co-sleeping, and one of the mothers rolled over on the other kid, and the kid suffocated and died. So when they woke up the next morning, you had one baby left and two moms claiming that each of those babies was hers. So finally this gets escalated to the king, to the Supreme Court. And at the time, everybody's looking around and saying, okay, there's no way we're going to be able to figure this out. This is her word against hers. How are we going to do this? And then Solomon says, bring me a sword. So they bring him a sword. And he goes, okay. And he holds up the baby. He says, listen, I'm going to chop this baby in half because we can't figure out who the mom is. I'm going to chop the baby in half. I'll give one half to you, one half to the other, right? And so the mother, of course, says, no, don't do that. I lied. I slept on the kid. It's her kid, okay? And the other mother says, fuck it, yeah, do that, and we'll be good. Until Solomon obviously said, okay, then that's the real mother, right? Because your affect will tell you if you really truly cared about the life of this child. Now, throughout this entire ordeal that all of us have collectively gone through, seeing these people massacred on a daily basis, the political group that was the moral conscience of America were the left. It was the left that first used the term genocide. It was the left that started protesting. It was the left that started talking out in social media. It was the left that cared about the Palestinian people. So now that a ceasefire has been tentatively reached, those same people should be overjoyed. Because the people that they were worried about, the people that they cried about every day for a year, the people that they stopped traffic for, they should be overjoyed that now they're going to get a chance to live. Right? Let's check this out.
Cheering in the streets and thanking God because after 15 long, nightmarish months, it might finally be over. A ceasefire between Hamas and Israel has reportedly been reached, which is set to go into effect on January 19th.
You should be overjoyed, Mr. Humanist Report person. He's just holding it in right now. He's holding it in right now because he doesn't want to like burst with joy and excitement. So he's holding in his excitement. Now, Adar is one of my best friends on the channel. He knows where I'm going with this. He already knows where I'm going before I go where I go.
One day before Donald Trump is sworn into office.
One day before Mr. Trump is sworn into office. One day.
I'm currently in a state of disbelief, and it's kind of difficult to collect my thoughts because I'm still shocked by this information. You know, when I saw the headline that Jake Sullivan was on CNN saying a ceasefire is near, I literally laughed because we've been hearing that now for more than a year, and it just seemed like it was never going to happen.
Now, why do you think that is, my brother? My beautiful, gay, right-wing hating, God hating, this brother describes himself as an anti-theist. Okay, so he's not an atheist, he's an anti-theist. He's against God. Meaning, even if God is real, he's against him. I'm not mad at him for that. I actually appreciate that a lot more than the weak agnosticism that a lot of atheists have, but won't claim atheism or anti-theism because they know they can't. Anyway, I don't know who this Kyle Brock fella is, but he is saying it's the Trump effect. Interesting, Mr. Brock. That's a very interesting hypothesis. Let's see. Let's interrogate Mr. Brock's hypothesis through this video and see how we come out. We continue.
So I'm not really sure.
By the way, like, share, comment, subscribe, people.
How to process this information, and to be honest, I'm pretty cautious about getting too hopeful here, and for good reason, which we'll talk about, but just knowing that the people of Gaza will have some relief, even if it's...
Okay, you got to give him credit for that. Not getting overly excited as this thing happens. Everybody knows, like, I'm radically pro-life. I pay prices for it. Almost went to the Supreme Court because of it. When the Roe v. Wade decision came out, the Dobbs decision came out, I did, 3 or 4 hours on stream to let people vent at me. But I was not spiking the football. Okay, so right now, like, I understand why he is not spiking the football. I understand why. Okay? That is completely valid. The thing just came out. As a matter of fact, I heard about this at like 10 in the morning, like earlier today, because my sleep schedule is crazy. I was gearing up for it, but I'm like, I don't like shooting these things so early because then something comes on and, you have to reverse it or whatever. But he's saying he's sitting on it. He's not going to, like, spike the football yet. That's completely understandable. We continue.
Temporary. Just to see the looks on their faces. That is really encouraging. Now, with that being said, they've lost everything. So the world needs to move quickly to address the humanitarian crisis if this ceasefire is actually successful, and we have to keep fighting for an end to the occupation altogether. But with that being said, here's a general outline of the deal per Al Jazeera. The Israeli military will withdraw to within 2,297 feet inside Gaza. Israel will release about 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. Palestinian groups will release 33 Israeli captives. Israel will allow injured people in Gaza to travel to receive medical treatment. Also, Israel will open the Rafah crossing with Egypt 7 days after the start of the first stage. Last but not least, Israeli forces will begin to pull back from Gaza's border with Egypt, known as the Philadelphia Corridor, to withdraw from it completely in later stages. Now, at the time that I record this video, some details are still being worked out, and this is just the first phase. Phase 2, where more hostages will be released by both sides, isn't expected to be negotiated until some point during Phase 1, although as it stands right now, it really isn't a guarantee that we'll even see a Phase 2. We'll have to wait and see, but more on that later. Now,
Wow, these are a lot of concessions. These are a lot of concessions, and a lot of people have pointed out this is very close to the deal that Biden, rubber stamped. We all know that Mr. Biden didn't actually generate the thought processes of this deal. Everybody knows I've been extremely respectful of Mr. Biden because I'm a Christian and the scripture says you shall not speak evil of a ruler of your people. I'm actually very proud of the fact that I did not take part in mocking Mr. Biden, just like I did not take part in mocking Mr. Trump, calling him the orange man and all the rest of it. I didn't do that. I gave the man the respect that the office demanded. The fact of the matter is, this went on for a year, and Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Putin and Mr. Ping, none of those individuals have the same respect for Mr. Biden that I do. And that's the reason why the world is on fire. I'm sorry to say this, dear listener, but one of the easiest ways to secure peace is to prepare for war. You walk softly and you carry a big stick. Mr. Trump on Twitter put it out there. If I get sworn in and my people aren't home, there's going to be hell to pay. That's what he told them, folks. How much you want to bet them Americans are getting first-class treatment right now? We continue.
For the deal itself, well, as Jeremy Scahill of Dropsite News reports, the terms of the deal being negotiated are largely consistent with what was on the table last May when outgoing President Joe Biden first announced it. Biden allowed Netanyahu to steamroll him for months, rewarding Israel with billions of dollars in arms transfers and political support after rejecting that ceasefire deal. In other words,
so Biden puts up a ceasefire deal, Bibi does this, and then in response to Bibi doing this, Mr. Biden did that to the tune of billions of dollars, while American citizens were dealing with hurricanes and all the rest of it. While Americans were dealing with that, he was sending billions of dollars to the Israelis after they gave him the finger about his peace proposal. Billions of dollars.
The same ceasefire deal has been on the table for months, but it's only being accepted now. The question is, why?
Why? Why is the ceasefire being accepted now? How come? You know, Mr. Trump said, on day one, when I swear in, that's going to be the end of Ukraine, Russia. And I remember this dude laughing, and I remember everybody laughing. I got to be honest with you guys. I was much more confident about the Russia situation than I was about the Israeli situation because of his actions in Tel Aviv at the beginning, right? Here's what my buddy Adar says. My guess is that Trump had a back channel to Bibi and told him not to let Biden get the political W. Polls show this issue cost Kamala the election. I have a species of that argument. However, one of the flaws in that argument, in my view, is the fact that Mr. Netanyahu has not been invited to the inauguration. So I'm not certain that he's as close with Bibi as they were saying. We continue.
Well, Evan Hill of the Washington Post tweeted out this excerpt from a report from Susanna George of the Washington Post, which reads, "A diplomat briefed on the ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas credited progress in the talks in part to the influence of President-elect Donald Trump, saying it was the first time there has been real pressure on the Israeli side to accept a deal."
Now, notice... No, notice how this is phrased. Okay, they credited the progress in the talks in part to the influence of Trump. So partially, there's a big giant, pie, and like 95% of it was Biden and Kamala. All that pressure that they put on those poor Israelis. And then 5% of it was Donald J. Trump. That's what's been going on. Who believes that, dear listener? This is pathetic. Okay. Credit in part to the influence of President-elect Donald Trump, saying it was the first time there has been real pressure on the side of the Israelis to accept a deal. Does that sound like partial responsibility to you? You told me he partially influenced this decision, but on the other hand, you also said in the same sentence that it was the first time the Israelis felt any pressure. In part. Unbelievable. We continue.
And that last sentence is stunning. Holy shit. What a way to go out if you're Joe Biden. Netanyahu has refused to accept a ceasefire this entire time, knowing that there'd be no consequences whatsoever from Biden for his recalcitrance. But all of a sudden, Trump steps in, applies a little bit of pressure, and we've got a deal. Really? That is fucking wild.
It's not wild, and all of us know it's not wild. Dear listener, if I came up to you and said, I have within my possession $10 billion, I will give you $1 billion if you guess correctly. Who was more influential in 1 week relative to the Israeli-Gaza conflict? Mr. Trump or Mr. Biden? Answer correctly, you get $1 billion. 100% of you are going to say Donald Trump. 100% of you are going to say Donald Trump. We all know what happened. What happened is the same reason that Mr. Putin, even though this guy and everybody else in, quote, left-wing media, except for Jimmy Dore, which you guys crucified him for that, by the way, this guy has been around for a year saying this stuff to Netanyahu. Nothing happens. And now all of a sudden, a day or two before Trump gets sworn in, Hamas is lining up properly, and so are the Israelis, and so are the Mexicans, and so are the Canadians. Dear listener, I hate to say it this way. People on the left do not understand how violence works. They don't get it. People on the left, we're going to put Kamala Harris, who could not sit and talk to Joe Rogan. She couldn't talk to Joe Rogan. They were going to say, yeah, she needs to be the commander-in-chief. She's going to get Bibi Netanyahu in line. Please. Please. Not what Jake said? Drake said, please. Check him for a wire or an earpiece. Please. Please do not leave. Man, come on, guys. Y'all know what this is. Y'all know what this is. We continue.
Now, if it sounds a little bit too good to be true, you're not wrong. But putting that aside for now, it is beyond humiliating for Joe Biden. I mean, the extent to which she has no shame can never, ever be overstated.
He said this is humiliating for Joe Biden. You know what's funny? This story got broke because I was perusing through Crystal and Sagar's breaking points, and they put humiliating in all caps. And I got to tell you, I'm so frustrated with that word. When people talked about how America was humiliated because of the way we pulled out of Afghanistan. I don't care about, look, humiliation is an emotional feeling, and it really has to do mostly with our ego and our narcissism. It's when you think you're something and then you realize that everybody around you doesn't think that you're that thing, right? But I think that this kid, that this dude right here, Mr. Humanist Report, is completely completely wrong. Mr. Biden is not humiliated at all. Mr. Biden did not humiliate himself at all. Mr. Biden's lifelong dream was to be known as the President of the United States, and he got it. And he loved it, and he loved it so much he couldn't give it away, right? He doesn't care about any of this stuff. He got to... Everything is off of his bucket list. You know who is humiliated, though? All of you and people like you who were talking about all this moralism when you were talking about voting for Trump, and the people who supported Trump were fascists, and they were Nazis, and they were this, and they were that. You guys have been humiliated because you guys selected the guy who was pro-genocide, and the other team selected a guy who ended the genocide before he was actually sworn in, possibly. You should be humiliated, sir, not Mr. Biden. Mr. Biden, God bless him. I don't think that he can be humiliated anymore. I don't think that that's where his mind is. But this is a masterclass in projection. No, you have been humiliated because you explicitly told people that you voted for this dude. And on top of that, you told people that you were going to vote for this woman who was going to be even less effective than Mr. Biden was. What are we talking about here? This is not the humiliation of Joe Biden. Joe Biden is still the most powerful person in the world, and he's got a Secret Service detail, and he's a multi-quadrillionaire. He's not going to care about this at all. Not even a little bit. But you, we've got eternal records of you supporting this administration that did absolutely nothing to stop the genocide of people that you supposedly care about.
I'm speechless, honestly. Those of us on the left have tried to warn Joe Biden for months that Netanyahu and Trump were in cahoots.
Oh.
He had to apply actual pressure on Netanyahu to get him to budge. He had to cut off weapons. Otherwise, there would never be a ceasefire.
Oh, this is what happened. Is that Bibi and Trump are in cahoots, and you guys were warning us. You guys were warning everybody. Hey, man, they're in cahoots. Well, then, if that's the case, then you just confessed that you believed that if Trump won, Bibi would stop killing them Gazan children, and you still told everybody to vote against him then. See how that goes? Did you get the logic? I'm going to rewind this again to hear what this dude had to say, because I don't think he understands what he just confessed about himself. Oh, yeah, it's happening today, y'all. It's happening today.
Never be overstated. I'm speechless, honestly. Those of us on the left...
Here it is.
...have tried to warn Joe Biden for months that Netanyahu and Trump were in cahoots. He had to apply...
Okay, so what he's saying is the reason that Bibi did this is because him and Trump were boys and they had a sweetheart deal from like months ago, and so blah, 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 blah. Well, then if that's the case, that means that he believes that as soon as Trump took office, those people would have stopped dying. Then why the fuck did you not tell us to vote for Trump then? If you thought that a Trump administration would save the lives of these Gazan women and children, why were you fighting so hard for us to vote for Biden then? You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. It almost appears as if you didn't really give a fuck about them people in Gaza. Almost like you didn't give a fuck about them kids in cages, did you? You or AOC. AOC, y'all don't remember AOC? She took the big photo op. She was crying in her white suit. Oh my God, look what we're doing to these people. Ted Cruz, nowhere to be found. None of these people were anywhere to be found. There's AOC, all by her lonesome crying. And there just happened to be a guy with like one of those 4K cameras and shit who just happened to catch it, boom, in the moment. But then we saw when the Biden administration took over, Ted Cruz, who could not be bothered with the border. All of a sudden, he ended up at the border. And what did we see? We saw kids in cages. You know what we didn't see? We didn't see AOC crying her eyes out. And then when the black dude went to Kamala and said, hey, how come you guys aren't there? She said, we've been to the border. And he goes, but you haven't been to the border. And then she said, I haven't been to Europe either. These were the people. These were the people that were insulting the intelligence of Trump voters and people who couldn't decide by election day. Behold.
Actual pressure on Netanyahu to get him to budge. He had to cut off weapons. Otherwise, there would never be a ceasefire. Because Netanyahu was waiting to see if Trump would get elected. And guess what? It paid off. Trump got elected.
Right. Netanyahu was waiting till Trump got elected. Almost like Putin waited until Biden was actually confirmed as the president, and then we didn't make it out of January before he invaded Ukraine. It's almost like these world leaders and despots interpret Trump to be somebody you should not try or test or fuck with, but they looked at Biden as completely weak and as somebody who was being controlled by shadowy figures in the background who could easily be bought off because they were not elected. That's what it looks like to me. I don't know.
And Netanyahu handed Trump a major victory, and Biden now looks like a chump. Unbelievable.
He doesn't look like a chump to me. He doesn't look like a chump to me. Number one, I say this as much respect as possible. He was not playing with a full deck, but you, Mr. Humanist Report guy, and you, Mr. Sam Sater, and you, Mrs. Hema Vigeland, you guys are at the peak of your psychological powers. All of you should be dancing in the street right now. All of you should be dancing in the street now, but look at him. He looks like he's been to a funeral. You know why? Because these leftists would rather have Gazan children die than have Trump save them. That's how much they hate Trump. They'd rather have Gazan children die than Trump save them. It's just like their party. Your party would much rather live under a Trump administration than a Bernie administration. I'm sorry, man. I am sorry. But him, Kalinsky, Vanguard, Vaush, Majority Report, Hassan, Crystal, all show they have no type of red line, not even to genocide. Correct. Correct. We continue.
Like, I don't even know what to think about this. It's just so insane. Now, both Donald Trump and Joe Biden are taking credit for this. So over on Truth Social, Trump claimed it happened.
This is ridiculous. If I was on Trump's team, I'd be like, bro, don't even say nothing. You ain't got to say nothing. But you know this is Trump. He going to say some shit, boy. Nobody on the planet believes that Joe Biden had anything to do with this. Joe Biden doesn't believe that. What are you talking about? We continue. Jesus.
Because of his win in November. Meanwhile, go on Twitter and you see Kamala.
I gotta post. I don't know who this guy is, but I gotta post it. He's sending some heat. The communist saying goes by any means necessary, and they mean any, including dead children thousands of miles away. 100% correct. I don't know you. I don't know what your political whatever is, but he just spoke the truth there, Mr. Kyle Brock. He's right. This was any means necessary for y'all. Really terrible stuff. We continue.
Harris crediting Joe Biden for this ceasefire. Now, as for Joe Biden himself, well, he was asked who deserves credit between him and Donald Trump, and his response was, we'll just say, pretty indignant.
Thank you.
Books credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh, thank you.
Wow. When it comes down to it,
Hey, shout out to President Biden. This man said, "Is that a joke?" No, Farley, it is not wrong to be skeptical. It's not wrong to be skeptical. All I'm saying is, even if the Israelis are playing possum, they had so little respect for Biden that they wouldn't even give him the respect of lying about it. That's what I'm saying. We continue.
I don't care how it got done or who did it. I just care that it happened. So I'm not going to automatically be against something that's objectively good happening if Donald Trump did it. If all of a sudden he chooses to go...
Yeah, but you're not going to celebrate it either like you would. Can you imagine if Bernie Sanders somehow got the presidency, and as the president-elect, Canada, Mexico, and Israel, Ukraine, all these people start lining up once they see that he's about to come into office? Can you imagine? It would be Bourbon Street every day out there with these people. Rightly so. Rightly so. But I give him credit for saying this is a good thing. This is an objectively good thing. But you see his affect here. He's upset that Trump is the one that did it. And he's also upset that literally all he did was snap his fingers and make this happen.
Full Bernie Sanders and says he supports Medicare for all, I'm not going to be like, actually, I don't support Medicare for all because Trump does support it. I care about policy, not politicians. Trump's not going to do that. But, I mean, the point that I'm making is I'm not going to, scoff at good things happening for partisan reasons. Having said that, though, let's be very, very clear. So the timing about this...
In that stand-up, 20 seconds into it, Biden referred to it as a ceasefire with Hezbollah. Shia Hezbollah, who's out there right now dealing with Jabhat al-Nusra because they're Sunni and they just took over Syria, which was Assad, who was a Shia. Like, we're not going to talk about that. This is crazy, bro. This is crazy. Look at his face. He's legitimately upset. He's legit. Yeah, Greenland. I like this Kyle guy. I got a friend request you. Find me on a thingy, Kyle. Maybe you can co-host the show with me one day. Listen. The Greenland deal is legit. Like, the Greenlanders are like, hey, we want to have a talk. Like, this is great stuff for our country. But because Trump is doing it, they won't allow themselves to celebrate it. It's crazy. We continue. Allahu Akbar.
Tells us a lot about this deal. It'll go into effect on Joe Biden's last full day as president. At any time during the last 15 months, he could have conditioned aid and actually applied real pressure to Netanyahu, but he refused to do that. So after hearing for a year that a ceasefire was just around the corner, the question is, well, why now? Why did it happen on Biden's last day in office?
Yeah, his last... Look at this guy. I might have to use this as a screen cap, damn it. I might have to use this as a screen cap. Look at him. Yeah, I got it. Because you got me in there, and then you got this guy. You got Kamala. You got everybody in that bitch. I gotta use this as a screen cap. Hold on here. Oh, this is so bad. I promise you guys, I'm a serious actor. Believe me, I'm a serious actor. But come on. All right, hold on. Let me go. There you guys go. Boom. Screen cap incoming. Screen cap incoming. Unbelievable. Oh, man, I'm having some fun here, guys. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. My brain is fried, but, I mean, good Lord. What are we doing here, guys? What are we doing? All right, we continue. Look at him. Why now?
I mean, if this is fundamentally the same deal that he originally negotiated back in May of last year, if he is responsible and does want to take credit, isn't it embarrassing that it's only happening now, right before Trump is inaugurated?
Embarrassing. Again, like that's these people's mindset. He and everybody that supported Biden and called Trump a fascist who's going to start World War III, he's projecting his own embarrassment and humiliation onto Biden. He knows good and well. He was one of these people that was always making fun of Joe Biden's mental decline. Okay? So now he's like, oh, aren't you humiliated? No, you're the one that should be humiliating. You told us to vote for this dude. And on top of that, you leftists were sitting there moralizing and pointing the finger at everybody else who disagreed with you. As if you guys were like the global humanitarians. And now that these people are actually screaming out Allahu Akbar and they're happy. You know, like I was watching one of these stations, The Bulwark, and he's like, how the hell did he convince Muslims in Michigan? Da 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 da. This is why. This guy Trump probably got up with one of them sheikhs and said, listen, look, Sheikh Salah, I'm going to get your people taken care of. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. I'm going to get your people taken care of. I'm going to say some dumb shit to Hamas on Twitter, but I promise you, on day one, I'm going to get that done for you. And that's the reason why those Michigander Muslims voted for him. Unbelievable. We continue.
I mean, why, if Biden is to take credit, is this happening now? What changed? What's different? Why did Israel suddenly have a change of heart? See, here's the thing. Joe Biden is full of shit. And objectively speaking, I'm sorry, based on the current information that we have, Trump does get credit for this. I'm not going to be a hack and say, oh, actually, you know, Biden was playing 4D chess. No. It just seems like Occam's razor here. Trump came in and the deal happened. So he gets credit.
You got to give him his respect. You got to give him his respect. You got to give him his respect. I'm talking about this dude right here, Mr. Humanist Report. You got to give him his respect. He's being honest. He's being real. The embarrassment, humiliation stuff is his own projection. But he's being real here. You got to give it to him.
At least temporarily. But with that being said,
I'm skeptical because I do not trust oppressors. Bibi is an oppressor. I agree. But one thing oppressive people know is the difference between power and the balance of power. And I think that he's run into a guy in Trump that is not afraid to push his weight around and say, I'm the lone superpower on the earth. You depend on me, not vice versa. Find some way to keep your dignity and pull the hell out of Gaza. But I told them people in Michigan. So until Chuck Farley's Chuck you Farley. It sounds like fuck you Charlie. I think all of us need to keep a skeptical posture until it's actually done and until we start seeing Israeli APCs leaving that zone so that we can actually start to rebuild. And maybe, inshallah, Mr. Trump can get us a $1 billion aid plan maybe to rebuild Gaza. Because we do owe them that. You guys do realize that, right? We owe the Gazans billions of dollars because we sent billions of fucking dollars to destroy those people. So the fact that there's a ceasefire now, I am not celebrating. Justice has not been done. All it means is that killing at the mass scale has been halted for a time. But for justice to be done, the minimum that Americans should do is aggressively support some form of reparation program for them Gazan people. Yes, I said it. Even before ours, because theirs is way more immediate. And all of us took part in it. All of us.
the ceasefire that Trump helped to facilitate will likely come at a great cost because of his involvement. So before you all give him too much credit, which he does deserve credit for this, there's a caveat, right? So Netanyahu only agreed to hand Trump a win and end the genocide, at least temporarily, because he's getting something very big in return, specifically the West Bank. Now, in an interview with Dropsite News, Gaza analyst Mohammed Shahada gives us a lot of context. And we're going to watch a 3-minute clip. As you're going to see, this is packed with information, so listen closely. But what he says here is really hard to digest.
Your assessment of how significant Trump's interventions have been since he became the president-elect?
Monumental. So until recently, mediators would tell me that everything would change if Biden would only name and shame Netanyahu, call him out publicly for rejecting and refusing the ceasefire repeatedly since May last year. So basically, everything that was changed is just Trump jumping in and doing that, nothing more. All he needed to do was just apply a little bit of pressure on Netanyahu and say, get a deal done. Netanyahu got it done immediately. Whereas for Biden, as a senior Arab diplomat put it recently to me, she said Biden is just ideological. Trump is transactional. He's a businessman. Biden, his heart is in it. He's fully devoted to supporting Israel. And he sees any pressure on Israel as, quote, tainting his legacy. He wants his legacy to be the most pro-Israeli president there is ever. So he chose that legacy over Kamala Harris's chance or opportunity to win. Now,
again, the minds of these people. Kamala Harris being the president or whatever is never going to happen regardless. But two, he chose his legacy over the lives of Gazan women and children and men. That's the story. Not that, but this is the people who are removed from this kind of suffering. This is the way they think.
with Trump, there is another dimension, as Dr. Sami mentioned, there's a transactional dimension that we don't know about yet. We know, of course, that Trump's pressure on Netanyahu sealed the deal. That is something that is undoubted. In the very last minutes of the negotiations, Netanyahu tried to maneuver by insisting on a couple hundred meters of the buffer zone. So now it's 700 meters. He wanted it to be 900 instead. And then Steve Witkoff had to press him and get that compromise out of him, and other issues as well, without which a deal would have never been sort of completed. But on the other hand, we are getting reports from Israeli media that are saying that Trump gave Netanyahu a gift bag in return, and that gift bag includes a promise to allow Israel to violate the ceasefire and provide them with cover for it. So in other words, to resume the war in Gaza as soon as the first phase is completed, never going into phase two, just getting 33 hostages out and then back to war again. The gift bag also reportedly includes lifting all Israeli settlers, extremists, settler organizations, Israeli shady tech companies like NSO that is responsible for the Pegasus spyware, lifting all sanctions on those companies and individuals. And number three, allowing Israel a major chunk, a major land grab or land theft in the West Bank. So that might be the case. It checks out. The other thing is that this morning, until the very last minute, we're getting reports from Netanyahu saying that he's telling Bezalel Smotrich, no, don't worry. It's only going to be a pause. It's not the end of the war. We will resume the war again. And in return, Smotrich asking for, quote, forcing Gazan migration as one of his conditions, is that even if there is a ceasefire, even if the war ends, you need to maintain conditions in Gaza as hell on earth, make it as uninhabitable as possible, ban concrete and cement from going in like Israel did in 2014, prevent reconstruction, and then people will leave, will have no option but to leave or face death by starvation, cold, or disease. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, there's a lot there, but...
That's what the Israelis say. The same Israelis who talk to us about 40 beheaded babies and the mass essay stuff that's all proven to be false. We will see. We will see. Because there were temporary ceasefires before. There was like a 2-week ceasefire like a couple months ago. So let's actually see. As of right now, as of this recording, Mr. Netanyahu is not scheduled to come to the inauguration. I think that's significant. We continue.
First and foremost, even though this is a ceasefire, Israel has no plans to let Gazans return to their homes, because we all know that they want that land for themselves.
Yep.
And an ominous thing that he said was that Trump gave Netanyahu a gift bag for agreeing to this deal. And that includes presumably 3 things. 1, a promise that Israel can violate the ceasefire and the United States will provide cover for them while they violate the ceasefire after a certain point. 2,
I find that extremely hard to believe with a guy like Trump, but let's see.
Lifting sanctions on Israeli settlers. And 3, major annexation of land in the West Bank. How major? We don't know. So this appears to be a short-term victory for the Palestinians in exchange for long-term pain. And this ceasefire might be a...
They're experiencing long-term pain right now. 40 to 50,000 of them are dead in the most horrific way possible. Okay? The Israelis have demonstrated to us clearly that they cannot be trusted. So I don't care what they say. I want to see what actually happens. We continue.
ruse so that way Trump can take office, boast about securing a deal and releasing some hostages, and then turning a blind eye to whatever happens next after he has his George W. Bush mission accomplished moment and gets to claim that he's a hero. So sure, I do think that Trump deserves credit for this deal, but
if the deal goes the way that they're saying it's going to go, he's absolutely a hero. And he doesn't need you to say he's a hero. Those people in Michigan who got family over there will think that about him. This is how narcissistic young people are, we are in this country. We think because people subscribe to our YouTube channels that, like, our ideas are whatever. Like, who the fuck is this guy? What are we doing here? Then people in Michigan absolutely are going to look at Trump like a hero. Absolutely they will. And so will I. If he gets this done, so will I.
The event, the worst case scenario, comes to fruition because of this deal, and Israel starts bombing Gaza again, and then...
Nope, the worst case scenario is what's been happening for the last 15 months. Not only that these Israelis are sociopathically murdering these children and booby-trapping toys with IEDs, yes... It's already happening, sir, is the worst case scenario.
Annexes a significant portion of the West.
100%. If there is a significant end to conflict in Gaza as well as Ukraine, if this man doesn't get the Nobel Peace Prize, then it doesn't mean a fucking thing. Mr. Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize before he was sworn in. He hadn't even done anything yet. And what did he end up doing? He became the droner-in-chief, and he deported a whole bunch of Mexicans. But he won. He won the. He was the droner-in-chief, and he was the deporter-in-chief. But he won the freaking Nobel Peace Prize. So if he doesn't get it, good night. Odds of them putting up Trump statues in Gaza, 0. These guys are Muslims, so you can't do that. But you watch what happens in that political landscape. If this man pulls it off, you're gonna see Michigan turn blood red. I promise you that. Because I know Muslims very, very well. They're socially conservative on every culture war issue that you can think of. But they usually voted blue because they were under the delusion that blue is in their corner. And if this actually happens, you're never going to get Michigan back. Watch. He stops this, fixes the economy. You guys are never going to see Michigan again. Honestly. Honestly.
Bang. Trump also has to accept responsibility for that as well if this was indeed part of the agreement that got Netanyahu to come to the table. Now, if it turns out that none of that happens and Trump just straight up stepped in and ended the genocide, he gets all the credit in the world. But as you can tell, I'm not ready to congratulate him on a job well done just yet because, as Mohammed pointed out, Trump is transactional, right? And there are conflicts of interest here that we have to be mindful of. His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, would love to own an auction beachfront property on Gaza. Trump himself took $100 million from Miriam Adelson.
This man, I don't think people understand. This man is a multi-billionaire, and he is the most powerful man on the planet Earth. He is friends with Elon Musk. He's got Jeff Bezos funding his wife's documentary. You really think that, oh, I'm going to work this in so that my son Jared can get some nice beachfront property? Are you ridiculous? What do you think would happen if Trump said, you know what? Go ahead, BB, just take it all over. Make sure that you take everything over by the time I get into office, and then sell Jared this little piece of land and we'll call it good. Why wouldn't he do that? Why would he go through this rigmarole if it was just about getting Kushner, man? See, he knows what the implications of this are, but he's holding on to hope. It was just like watching them when they were reacting to the election. I knew I needed my man. I blame gravity. Dude literally got a Nobel Prize for making a poster that said, yes, we can. Where's the Nobel Prize that made that made the hang in there cat poster? Is there no justice? This is probably the quote of the year. Was it at 2025? Fuck. I don't know. We're in January, bro. I don't know if your quote's going to survive that long, but it's currently the quote of the year. Good night. Good night.
On the condition that he lets Israel annex the entire West Bank. So I'm comfortable for now admitting that Trump deserves credit for the ceasefire. That's
Respect.
objectively good.
Respect.
But ultimately, the devil is in the details.
Respect.
What matters is what happens after the ceasefire.
He's right.
If it's only temporary, if there are these conditions that really are attached to it. I mean, Trump will sell out Palestinians in a heartbeat if he thinks that there's something to be gained from it. It goes back to the transactional nature of him as a person, as Muhammad pointed out. But Muhammad also described Biden as ideological, which is correct. This has been evident for a very long time now. Biden genuinely believes in Israel's Zionist project. And
No, you're wrong. The ideology that Biden is committed to is not Zionism. It's Bidenism. You just heard it. He didn't say, I care so much about Netanyahu. What he said was he cared about his legacy. So his ideology is not, oh, I love Jewish people, blah, blah, blah. The ideology is this is a European outpost in a Middle Eastern context. And I want to be known as a guy that upheld European supremacy in the Middle East. That's what his ideology is.
he was more than willing to let Israel massacre as many Palestinians as they wanted to in the name of that colonial project, to the point where he was willing to jeopardize Kamala Harris's chances of defeating Donald Trump. Now, with that,
there it is again. This conversation is in the context to give explanatory power to why Kamala Harris lost, and we're not talking about the thousands upon thousands of people that died in horrific fashion. This is the face of the modern liberal right here. We're not talking about the lives of these people. We're not talking about mothers who had to give birth next to dead husbands. Nope. We're talking about this cost us the election, and now you're going to give Trump a win walking into the thing, blah, 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 blah. Everything is political with these people, bro. It's unbelievable how unfeeling and uncaring these people are. How they will use human suffering to push forth an agenda and pretend they care. All you weirdo white people in 2020 telling me to vote for this man. Oh, Vin, don't you care about racism?
being said, Kamala Harris is a grown woman, and she could have pulled a Humphrey. She could have distanced herself from Joe Biden. She didn't have to tether herself to that sinking ship, but she refused to do that, and it cost her greatly. Now, leftists...
Because she has zero political talent and instinct. People could say what they want. Barack Hussein Obama was not a creation of the DNC. He was a uniquely gifted and talented rhetorician as well as politician. Same thing with Mr. Trump. I would say the same thing about Mr. Biden if he didn't get his opportunity so late into the game for himself. Kamala is not. She never was.
like myself warned Democrats that this is something that could cost her the election, and come to find out, it actually did cost her. Big time. Per YouGov, a poll released Wednesday, January 15th by IMEU Policy Project in YouGov found what few in the Democratic Party have been willing to admit. Vice President Harris lost votes because of the Biden administration's support for Israel's genocide of Palestinians in Gaza. 29% of voters nationally who voted for Biden in 2020 and did not vote for Kamala Harris in 2024 say ending Israel's violence in Gaza was the top issue affecting their vote choice.
No! It's misogyny and racism. It's just that. Nothing else. It's just misogyny and racism. Isn't that what y'all told us? That's what y'all told us.
Biden 2020 voters who did not vote for Harris in 2024 were asked which of the following issues were most important in deciding your vote. These were the issues that they selected. And as you can see, Gaza was the biggest reason why these voters stayed home, even though they voted for Biden in 2020, citing Gaza as a bigger factor than the economy, which tells you a lot. But there's more. In close battleground states, these were the percentages of voters who didn't vote for Kamala Harris because of her position on Gaza. As you can see, 38% in Arizona, 32% in Michigan and Wisconsin, and 19% in Pennsylvania. Finally, 36% of 2020 Biden voters who didn't vote for Harris said they would have been more likely to vote for Harris if she broke with Biden and promised to withhold weapons from Israel. And even among the 2020 Biden voters who did vote for Harris, 35% said that they would have been more enthusiastic to vote for her if she broke with Biden. In other words, she sacrificed her chance.
Hey, listen. I'm extremely proud of our country, man. That's incredible. I expect that from Michigan because Michigan is one of the most strongly populated states with Muslims. It is. Minnesota doesn't surprise me because there's a heavy Somali contingent down there. We've got a large Somali contingent in Maine where I used to live. And it's funny because we used to go out there and play basketball. We had nicknames for everybody. So one guy's name was Terrorist. Like literally his name was Terrorist. He'd be like, yo, what are you up? Terrorist, give me the ball, baby. To this day, I don't know his name. And then we had one kid named Jeezy. We had one kid named ATL. We had one kid named, I think we called him Nebraska. And then everybody else was named Minnesota. So everybody had like so Minnesota, I understand. Michigan, I understand. But Arizona, almost 40% of those people said, nah, I'm not. 4 out of 10 people said, I'm not going to vote for this broad because she's just going to continue killing them kids in our name, and Americans couldn't handle it. I think that says a lot about us as a country, man. That's millions and millions of people who said, nah, I'm not with that. This is worse than even what we're doing with the economy. I can't believe that. I'm proud of my fucking country. Yes. Like there's still some life in us as people. The economy is terrible. It's horrible. Everybody's hurting. And my country looked across and said, yeah, we're getting murdered here, but man, they're really killing these people, bro. I love that. But again, people like this guy and the rest of the quote left, are you guys gonna sit back for once and shut the fuck up for once and think maybe we're the wrong ones? Maybe we lost our way and the country actually are the sane ones. Maybe we've been wrong this whole time. Maybe we have been the monsters the entire time, saying all this shit about Trump supporters who we don't even know. All these people that you were looking down on put a Palestinian kid that they've never seen, never heard, don't know his language, will never know his name. 38% of those people in Arizona all across the country said, I would rather have $50 eggs than be responsible for killing these kids. And you and the rest of the people that were in your crew mocked these people incessantly. You had nothing but judgment for them. So maybe now, people in our generation, for once, I understand you have a YouTube channel. Shut the fuck up and do some introspection. You were on the side of monsters. And if you would have won, more Gazan children, guaranteed, would have been killed without any hope whatsoever.
At becoming the president because of Israel. Now, when it comes to that last group of people who sucked it up and voted for Harris anyway, you might think that their level of enthusiasm is irrelevant because their vote was all that mattered, but it did matter. Because those people would have maybe encouraged their friends to vote for Kamala Harris too. Maybe they would have donated or phone banked or canvassed for Kamala Harris.
And look at this. We're talking about phone banking. We're talking about this. We're talking about that. We could have had Kamala win. Why would we want Kamala to win in this context, dude? Why are we once again relitigating what they should have done? So now it's like, this was bad strategy. This wasn't about genocide like you said it was. This wasn't about suffering children like you said it was. This is the real issue here is, man, we guessed wrong about what people were going to be upset about. Damn, dude. Damn, and y'all were really running around thinking that you were morally superior to everybody. You know, I gotta tell you. People always ask me, because I grew up as a Christian my entire life. What was one of the things that shocks you, once you guys started the channel, you started interfacing with atheists, etc. I had no idea that the same religious, judgmental, I am better than you attitude, the moralism that religious people have, unbelievers have that shit in spades. And they operate in literally the exact same way. Missing the forest for the trees, upset about the inability to secure power. That's what he's talking about right now. How about you just start naming off Palestinians, Abdul Rahman, Muhammad, Dihya, all these people that have just been massacred with our tax dollars going to massacre these poor people. What about that? Nope. We're going to talk about this made it so that we couldn't get any power, and now Trump is in power, and he's using that power to save the lives of Palestinian people, and we don't like that because we've been saying to everybody that if you support Trump, you're an evil Nazi, when in reality, this dude is saving these people from Nazis.
If they were actually excited about her and didn't just feel like they were voting for the lesser of two evils. So this issue didn't just cost Kamala Harris votes. It demoralized the Democratic Party's base, even the people who voted for her.
Like you. Immoral people like you.
And, I want to say I told you so, but what's the point? I don't give a shit.
You want to say I told you so? You go. The name of this guy's thing is The Humanist Report. He's got a video where he laughs for 45 minutes long at undecided voters. They were like 3 or 4 days before the election. He was mocking undecided voters and saying they were morons and they were stupid and there was only one choice. But now he's like, I told you so. This is one of the reasons. This is why I said this like 3 years ago. I said the left in America is dead. Actually, I said it in 2020. I said the left is dead. It's over for y'all. Because you guys were too young as a movement, and because you're too young, you don't understand how the world works. So I said, man, all this stuff that these people are trying to do, it's very beautiful, it's very great. You guys aren't going to do anything. Because part of maturity, part of winning, is figuring out where you went wrong. The second half of this video should have been him saying, I was completely wrong. I used my influence to tell you guys to vote for a genocidal maniac. Thank God that the majority of the country didn't listen to me, because if they did, we'd have more Palestinian bodies on our account. This guy cares about Palestinian children as much as AOC cared about Mexican children, which is nothing. They don't care about that.
About being right. I wish I were wrong.
You were wrong.
But sometimes,
you're revising
right,
history.
And you're called out for being right if you're right too soon, and liberals shit on you for it, and could have been prevented. I don't know what to think anymore.
This guy's full of shit.
This whole past year has been so demoralizing.
Yeah, you don't know what to think because you were up there on your high horse talking shit about Trump and saying there's only one moral selection to make. And now that you've been completely proven wrong, now you want to sit there and revise history. Sir, all your previous videos are still up there for people to watch. You guys are delusional. But this is what I'm saying. Like, he doesn't have any blood in this, guys. He doesn't have any blood in this. Like, when I'm talking about pro-life issues, we put blood on the ground. I had people running from police. We had our names in national media. People knew where we lived. One of the guys had to go get guns, all the shit. Like, we really, really put on the line. People threatened to murder us. All type of shit. Shit that I don't even share with you guys. We were getting published in China. Like, it was crazy. Like, we was really ready to die over this shit. So, when I'm talking to you about Roe v. Wade and abortion and seeing dudes shove girls into the clinic and all the rest of it, like, that's because my children paid a price. My children paid a price. My friends paid a price. Like, we really were invested in that. This guy is not invested in the well-being of Palestinian people. He's invested in his YouTube channel, and he's invested in being right, and he's invested in revising history so he comes off looking well, and he doesn't have anything in the emotional reserves to be happy for these Palestinians.
But come to find out, the issue really did matter. it played a significant role in Kamala Harris's loss. So, masterful gambit, Democrats. Good job, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. You let Netanyahu play you like a fucking fiddle, and you're leaving the White House with no power and blood on your...
Why isn't Netanyahu going into the inauguration since him and Trump were so buddy-buddy? At this point, it was announced 6 days ago that Netanyahu's not going to the inauguration. How come? See, his cope right now is like, oh, Netanyahu had this plan from the beginning. Stop it. No, he did not. No, he did not. They had contingencies, just like the Russians had contingencies, sir. We continue. That's not how intelligence works. That's not how violence works. That's not how world leaders work. This is a lefty guy trying to cover himself and pretend that he wasn't telling us to vote for the genociders. And now after the genociders got exposed, now he's saying, well, I knew that the more of the same was going to happen with Kamala because she never signaled anything else. But then you told us all to keep voting for her, which means that you wanted them kids to die. You fucking weirdos. We continue.
Good job. And now Trump and the Republican Party, they are stronger than ever, more emboldened than ever. Was it worth it? I mean, what are you getting out of this? Netanyahu's getting a lot out of this. He's potentially getting the West Bank. What are you getting out of this? Kamala could have been the president of the United States if she just did the right thing, the common sense thing, the strategic thing. But she didn't. What, out of loyalty to Biden? I don't get it.
But you were telling us to vote for her!
By the behavior of this administration. And I'd be remiss to not point out this old tweet from the Gravel Institute, who predicted all of this before Biden even secured the nomination. They tweeted this back in 2019, quote, if Democrats nominate Joe Biden, he may win and will have 4 years of weak, feckless Democratic leadership. And then, in 4 years, he'll be defeated by a Republican Party even more openly white nationalist. If you nominate an Obama redux, you'll just get a worse Trump redux. And here we are.
That was the day before my birthday. And the day before Orion was born. No, 2 days before Orion was born. We went to labor on my birthday, and Orion was born the day after my birthday. But this is incredible. The narcissism of our generation, people in our generation, is mind-boggling. This is a completely narcissistic, lacking in self-aware take that is almost unbelievable to me. There's a minute left, guys. Let's see.
Getting back to the ceasefire, I am happy for now, but I
can tell you're
still
overjoyed.
worried. I'm worried for what's to come, so we'll just have to take it one day at a time. I hope that it works out, and I hope that this really is a permanent ceasefire. I'm crossing my fingers. But regardless if, this deal goes through at all or fails at the last minute, we all have to continue to raise our voices for Palestinian human rights, because an end to the genocide isn't going to facilitate an end to the occupation, and we can never stop speaking out for Palestinians until they are fully liberated. But justice isn't enough. There needs to be accountability for the perpetrators of these crimes, and that doesn't just include Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. That includes Joe Biden and Antony Blinken, specifically, who aided and abetted these war criminals in Israel at every fucking step of the way.
Okay, so now they need to report to The Hague for the war crimes that they committed. But you were telling us to vote for him when he was running, and then vote for his VP when she was running, both of whom we all knew were controlled by Barack Hussein Obama. So if you would have had your way, them kids would have still gotten murked. But now you're calling for a war crimes tribunal, and you're calling for them to get held accountable. Strange. He's just saying what he's supposed to say so that he could stay on brand. But let's make no mistake about this. This guy did not give a fuck about Gazan children. At all.
If there was any justice in the world, they'd both spend the rest of their pathetic lives behind bars for crimes against humanity, but we all know that's not going to happen. So the best that we get is the satisfaction...
is to vote for them. You told us to vote for a war criminal who was literally in the midst of committing war crimes. This is what happens when you moralize and pretend you're better than everybody. This is one of the things I love about Christianity. I'm on the right side of this because God gave me the grace and eyes to see. If God did not give me the grace and eyes to see, I'd be just like this guy, probably worse. But see, he doesn't have that in his ideology. He doesn't understand that he was born in sin, and so like this selfishness is something that's native to your soul, to your being. And so sometimes our selfishness deceives us, and you got caught up in it. But don't beat yourself up for too long, because that's just the weakness of human frailty. And let's look to God to forgive our sins, and let's look to Jesus for our example, and see if we can make the world a little bit better tomorrow than we did today. That's the idea. But because he doesn't have that framework, because he has no redemption, all he has is the guilt of the fact that he supported a genocide, and the people that he was against are the ones that probably stopped it, and he has no way in his current worldview to deal with that kind of guilt. So he has to project righteousness. He's got to project that he's been on the right side of this the entire time, because he doesn't know how to deal with his own sin and his own corruption. See how that works? We continue.
Knowing that Biden's lasting legacy will be genocide, and my hope is that he lives long enough to see all of society and all of the world come to that realization and view him as the war criminal that he is.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Mr. Biden is not half the war criminal that Mr. Hussein Obama is and was, or whatever you want to say. This is just the virtue signaling from a guy who really doesn't know what to do. I really think he's in some sort of existential crisis, because I honestly believe that he thought he was on the side of good and that Trump was on the side of evil. What these people don't understand is that what we do on YouTube is not activism. The biggest danger that you're going to have with YouTube is that they're going to throttle you for having an opinion that they don't like. Okay? So there's no real activism happening from YouTube. Real activism is you're on the street. Real activism is people know where you live. Real activism is cars chill by where you are and don't move for hours. Or they watch you when you go to church and you see one car waiting, and then you come out of the church and the car is still there, then they look at you and drive away. That activism is having contacts in the FBI call you up and say, hey, you got listed here, here, and here, and folks are talking about doing XYZ thing to you. That's the life of a real activist. What we do on YouTube is not real activism. Nothing is going to happen to me for saying all this shit, and nothing is going to happen to this dude for saying all the dumb shit he did. Real activists are the people that interrupt during the Hegseth thing and say, you're a misogynist, whatever. That's activism. Where you actually, your activity costs you. What we do on the internet is not activism. It is not virtuous. I am safely sharing my opinion in an air-conditioned environment. I'm not paying any prices whatsoever. So, you got a lot of people who have stars in their eyes and want to be activists and want to do XYZ, but left-wing people, we are so immature that we won't even wait in line to vote. Look what happened to Bernie in 2020. All the Bernie bros had to do was show up, but they're too lazy to show up. And we've got all this ideology and none of the grit and none of the work ethic. None of it. And we think if we say some edgy stuff about the president, which just proves that you don't really believe he's a fascist. You wouldn't be saying all that weirdo shit about the president, about Mr. Trump, if you really thought he was a fascist. Okay? Good night. I didn't vote Trump. I expected the worst intentions involving Gaza from his very hawkish foreign policy cabinet. I'm elated to be constantly proven wrong for the love of God. Look, I was working pretty closely with a Trump operative, and when he selected Marco Rubio, like that whole crew was really disappointed because Marco Rubio is a ultra-Zionist crazy hawk. And so there was a lot of like, oh man, this is a terrible signal. But again, Trump went to Michigan himself and somehow convinced the elders in that community to have their people vote for him, and that's exactly what happened. And You know, I'm very interested to see what Rashida Tlaib has to say about this situation, for sure. Young Stalin was going to be a priest, subhanAllah. I should have kept that boy in there. Bernie was a sheepdog. His campaign was designed to fail. I keep hearing that. I am sorry. I just can't rock with that. I agree that he was designed to fail, and I believe that they turned him into a sheepdog. But I do not believe that he was always a sheepdog from the beginning, or that, especially when he ran in 2020, that he was planning to be a sheepdog. But yeah, he doesn't have the edge. Bernie, I voted for Bernie in 2016 primaries after what Hillary and the DNC did to him. I've been Trump ever since. This guy, this Kyle Brock guy, is like the essence of like the problem with the modern left, and one of the reasons why I said we're not going to be able to have any real power until we mature. I'm assuming that you were going to go for Bernie Sanders because of Medicare for All. Bernie Sanders had a version of populism that, oddly enough, wasn't anti-government and wasn't anti-American. You could argue that he demonized the millionaires and the billionaires, but it wasn't a demonization like the way Trump demonizes immigrants or the way that Biden demonizes Trump supporters, etc. We had a chance at some real gentle populism, inclusive populism, all the rest of it, and the DNC said no, because if the American people get a taste of this kind of populism, we will never get the party back. That's exactly what happened with the Republicans. They resisted Trump because they found out that he was not a Republican. And when I say found out, what I mean is they watched him and they realized that he wasn't going with the narratives. And that's the reason why they tried to kill him. I haven't said this out loud, but I was going back and forth with one of my friends. This was after the Epstein situation, and Trump basically went with the party line on Epstein. And I said, listen, your man is not like some outsider like you think he is. He's going along with the Epstein stuff. They said, yeah, I don't really like that. I said, listen, if he makes it to 2024 and they don't kill him, they don't try to kill him, that means he's with them. Because the only way a person like that should be able to continue to walk and talk should only be a miracle from God. There is no way that he's against them like that and they're letting him live. And sure enough, 3 months later, they tried to kill that man 3 times within a 90-day period. Sorry. And I think it was a collusion between the Democrats and the Republicans. You see a lot of these Democrats now, they're saying like, oh, Merrick Garland, this is Merrick Garland's fault. Not realizing what they're just saying to the American people. Hello, newscasters. Mr. Trump not only won the Electoral College, he won the popular vote. So when you say dumb shit like, oh shit, man, Merrick Garland, he shouldn't have waited so long, you're essentially saying that the law should have taken out a candidate that the majority of the people wanted, all the while telling us that you were pro-democracy. And they literally do not see the hypocritical nature of what they're saying. It's mind-boggling to me. The hypocrisy is insane. The Republicans knew that if this guy gets in office, he's never going to give it back to us. The Democrats knew if this guy gets in office, we are never going to get the party back. It's going to be the AOCs and the Tlaibs and all the rest of it. We can't have that. And the left doesn't have the experience because we're all so young. And most of us are not well traveled. And most of us now, especially the generation after us, you guys are internet natives. You truly, truly believe that the world is like your chat room. You really believe that. All right. Those people who try to take out Trump were his ops. I don't care what the media says about them. Yeah, I mean, obviously. Yeah, Trump is obviously more anti-establishment than any Democrat. It's true. It's absolutely true. Look, man, I agree with the Humanist Report in the sense of you can't really celebrate until really the Palestinians are free. Freedom should be the standard. But you cannot be free. This is what I talk about when I talk about abortion. You cannot exercise any of your rights if you're dead. And so, even though he's right, we want to see the end of the occupation en toto. This is still a good respite, especially for those Palestinian people. And principally, yeah, it's not time to spike the football, but if you were a Palestinian family that somehow survived, and you get to wake up and hear that these people are going to leave and relieve some pressure, that'll be everything in the world. When you see a woman, I know a little bit about Islam and the culture that it creates. There's an extremely high primer on this concept called haya, which is shyness. And I think psychologically that Muhammad was probably a little bit OCD, and he theologized some of his pathologies. And being shy was one of his major pathologies. He was easily embarrassed, easily shy, and so they theologized that. My point is, that dictates a lot of Islamic culture. So when you see a Muslim woman surrounded by men and women with a camera on her, and she bows to the ground in front of everybody, that's because she is in a certain kind of headspace of ecstasy that you and I can never relate to. Touching those people, meeting those people in their culture is will change. It changes you. It definitely changed me. Too late, obviously. Obviously too late. Let me see. Are you familiar with the work of the Libertarian Party leaders like Angela McArdle, Dave Smith, and Clint Russell in negotiating a historic first in the... I'm not, but I'm very curious as to the end of your sentence, my brother. Funny thing is, Trump seems to be... Yeah, Trump is definitely more anti-establishment. I think if Trump ever visits the West Bank or Gaza, he will completely change his tune on Israel. I agree. Trump is an extremely sentimental guy. He's truly sentimental, and he does have vulnerabilities. So, I mean, I'm not around him or anybody in his circle. I truly am not. But he just appears to be a very feeling person, and he's kind of functioned as a Rorschach test. All of these people that are talking about how crazy he is and how fascist he is and how authoritarian he is, I'm truly starting to believe that accusation is becoming confession with these people. I used to look at the left as a bunch of inexperienced and young bleeding heart liberals who have rose-colored glasses and don't understand how the world works. The brutality and coldness that is alive and well in a lot of young leftists is alarming, and the reaction to this situation should cause them some pause. Why would a Kamala Harris victory or why would a Trump defeat make you infinitely more happy than the prospect of a ceasefire in Gaza? Why? Are you really a naive kid who just wants the best for everybody? Or are you much more like your parents and you want to realize, and it just depends on which team is in power. You want just as much power as your horrible, nasty, religious, right-wing parents. You want the exact same type of power. You just want it repackaged in a blue suit instead of a red suit. Maybe now on the left, we could do some real and true introspection as to who we actually are as human beings. At minimum, the moralizing of the left, maybe you guys now can seriously and truly, sincerely, respectfully shut the fuck up with the moralizing, okay? Somebody disagrees with you on the trans topic, don't moralize it. Argue the facts. Somebody disagrees with you on immigration, don't moralize it. Argue the facts. Stop with the moralization. Because after today, you guys can't say a fucking word. Just be quiet. Do some introspection. Stop pointing the finger at everything and everyone and look in the fucking mirror once. Maybe you're the villain. And here's a hint. Just historically speaking, if you are part of an empire, you're the fucking villain. Well, that would mean that you would be a villain. Absolutely. Absolutely, I've been a villain. Why do you think I'm advocating for these Muslim people so much? Think I'm doing this out of the goodness of my heart? I got shit to repay, man, for the rest of my life. We're all the villain. No, you're not as good as you thought you were. You're actually worse than you could imagine. All of us are. Exactly. Even at the prospect of peace, you should want the one that is trying to get it. He has nothing to gain now. He's already president, and he's taking control quickly. Correct. And if he wants a spot in the Gaza Strip, listen, it doesn't matter what side. If Jared Kushner, let me tell you something, those Palestinians would treat Jared Kushner like a prince if he was over there. He doesn't. That's what I'm saying. Like, he doesn't need to do anything with Bibi Netanyahu to get beachfront property. That man, listen, if he pulls off a ceasefire for any significant period of time, I trust me, the Muslims are some of the most forgiving people. You could kill their cousin. You'll be at souk, somebody looking at you, keep looking at you, blah, blah, blah. Then you see them start talking to their friends and shit, and you start going, oh, okay. And then you got people in your area, hey, blah, 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 tell the client, da, da, da. You're like, yeah. And then they come up to you and they say, you're blah, blah, blah. And you're like, sa. They say, you killed my cousin. And you're like, whoa, shit. They go, it happens, it's war. You fought bravely. Respect, turn and walk away. They're the most virtuous people on the face of the earth. Those people. They're extremely forgiving, and they understand that war is war. Because that's all they've been in for the last 40 to 50 years because of us. But they understand war. And they understand letting bygones be bygones and just trying to move on with your life. I hope that our generation of young people who are full of all this vim and vigor, I hope that in the next 4 years we can really barrel down and start to think things through a little bit. And everybody wants to believe that they're an independent thinker. We all want to believe that we're independent thinkers. And all of us, especially people who frequent channels like this, we know what's really going on. Everybody else is brainwashed except for us. Dear listener, what are the odds that you were born and raised in America and you're not brainwashed? How about zero? How about zero? Dear listener, the time has come to realize that these people in our media have complete and total control over your soul. Yes, they do. I could show you an article 3 years ago. It said Ukraine. Actually, it said 2-3 years ago. Time magazine. Ukraine has a Nazi problem. I could show you New York Times. Elon Musk is going to save the world. But if he is, we need 20 more like him. That was in the New York Times. And now, I'm supposed to hate Elon with a passion. And I'm supposed to hate Trump. These people have completely manipulated us and took your soul. They've made you angry at people you don't even know. They made you admire somebody And then in 4 months, they turned him into public enemy number one. They took a country that has about 14% of the GDP of California and turned it into public enemy number one, Putin and Russia. If you think that you are some free thinker that has not been influenced by Americanism, you're crazy. I homeschool my children. People say, why do you homeschool your children? Because you're trying to brainwash them? I said, now that's very funny. If I educate my own children, I'm brainwashing them. So then what was the point of the public school system? So when the parents educate their kids, it's brainwashing, but when the public school system does, it's not? This is an exercise, dear listener, in how free of a thinker are you really? If the left, I'm talking about the young left, I'm not talking about the mature left like Anna Kasparian, and to some extent Cenk. I'm talking about this, the toddler left is what I'll call it. That guy was a toddler leftist. You know the thing about toddlers is they're extremely short-sighted. They cry all the time when they don't get what they want, and they don't understand how to balance out power and leverage. And that's where the left-wing movement is right now. It's childish. It is entitled. It is soft. It doesn't know how to suffer. It doesn't know how to play the long game. It's hyper-emotional. It's hypocritical. It runs a massive primer on being completely unaware of oneself. And then it replaces real religion with secular religion, replete with heresies, like, for example, misgendering someone, that's a heresy. Not believing in 500 genders, that's a heresy. That's a social heresy of the secular left. And there's excommunication principles, just like in heavy hardcore. I've seen it. What happened to Anna, where you blame the victim instead of going after the sexual assaulter because you don't want the sexual assault thing to get really big, because then everybody will start looking at that group of people. So you tell the woman who's been assaulted, just shut the fuck up, which is what they did to Anna. I've seen that before. The difference is that the Catholics have the sense of mind when they're victim blaming to do that behind closed doors and only with their own people. They don't go out in public and do that. But the left, they went out in public and did it. So look, we're gonna learn. We're gonna learn as young idealistic people. We're not gonna learn that our ideals were wrong. Our ideals are great. The ideals of left-wing people, everybody's equal, nobody's suffering, those are great ideals. The problem is that they do not have a worldview that can bring about that kind of planet. Because there are entire metaphysical categories that every successful society is contingent on that they have self-consciously rejected. Dear listener, a lot of this modern secularism, blah, 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 came out of the Western world. And it came after Westerners were so comfortable in the civilized world that they started getting restless. And then you had Nietzsche and all the rest of it. The point of what I'm saying is worldview does matter. It matters not in just your core beliefs, but it also matters in literally the way that you perceive everything. None of us is seeing a thing in itself. Not this object, okay? You are not seeing the thing in itself. You are seeing something that is filtered through a bunch of things, through your eyes, through your cornea, through your brain, through the pixels on this thing right here. I've got it in 4K right now, blah, 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 okay? There are so many mediums you have to go through to replicate this picture, okay? And so you have to understand that everything you're looking at has something deeper underneath it. You're not seeing the thing in itself. You are seeing a combination of your own biases, your own limitations, and your own oral history about how the world works and how you got here. The idea that you're just looking at everything objectively is ridiculous. Sight itself is subjective, but that's a different discussion. Okay. All right, guys. Much love to everybody. Love your neighbor. Take care of each other. If you are a praying person, pray that the Israelis come to their senses and don't try to do no fluky shit with these Gazans. And pray also for the heart of the President of America to get these people some help and rebuild their destroyed and ruined cities, which we are responsible for. Love your neighbor. Take care of each other.